Afrofuturism. Now, Afrofuturism is really growing in leaps and bounds. NBC.com just ran a story about the fact that the Smithsonian now has a special exhibit on Afrofuturism exhibit. I think Wakanda, the Black Panther, really opened that door. It existed already, but after Wakanda, now suddenly it's being noticed. Now, the interesting thing about Where It Rains in Color, people ask me all the time, well, was that inspired by the Black Panther, by Wakanda? No, because I happen to be one of those debut authors who's debuting her first novel at a later age in life. So I got the idea from a dream. So I originally wrote this novel, I don't know if I should be embarrassed to say, but about 30 years ago, long before Black Panther. I wrote it, I was in between jobs. Thank you. And I think because I'm looking at you and, you know, I don't see anybody in here under 21. If you are, I'm sorry. but anyway, I think that this might be inspiring to release your first novel at the age of 70. I mean, that's just amazing thing to do.
Who said?
I mean,
no.
Yes. Well, anyway, but I wrote it back when 30 years ago. I was in between jobs. I was always having these dreams. And then I had one dream one night about this woman wearing this hood, and she was standing in front of these beings that were translucent, and they were saying, "We sentence you to the keloid planet." I didn't know what that meant. I woke up, jotted it down, and I had to hurry up and get ready for work. And that happened all the time. I was always having these creative dreams, these imaginative dreams, but I didn't have time to deal with them. Then I was in between jobs. That was about 30 years ago. I wrote it all down, and I jotted it down, and then I went to work. And then I had written it down, and when I was in between jobs, I had time to explore the dream. I didn't know what it meant. She said something about speaking in the Anekotek tongue of her father. I didn't know what that meant until I sat down and started writing it. When I finally got that block of time, I had about 3 months. I wrote it real fast and stuck it in a drawer. Forgot all about it until, fast forward 30 years later, here it is. Then it was time to really, really explore. So during that time, a lot had happened. I'm a Trekkie, and I remember on Star Trek Next Generation, they went to an all-black planet, and I was excited, but I didn't feel like they explored melanin enough. They didn't explore the texture of our hair enough. They didn't do things that I wanted them to do. What I want more than anything with Where It Rains in Color is to actually address some issues with the African diaspora that I feel like it's 2023, and we're still dealing with issues of colorism. I want to deal with that once and for all. I want the entire spectrum of our skin tone to be celebrated. I want us to look ahead, which is what Afrofuturism does. One of my favorite quotes is, "The past may be stained, but the future is spotless." And so with Afrofuturism, with all sci-fi and spec fiction writers, we look ahead and we say, we're like artists and we have a paintbrush. What can I paint on this future that's different? And I feel like, as people of African descent, that do we have to go into the future with the same baggage? We have this past history. If we look at the transatlantic slave trade, we look at the civil rights movement, we look at colonialism, all of it. Can we claim something better? Can we be leaders? Do we have to take the same tendencies? So that's what we're doing with, that's what I'm doing with Afrofuturism, and that's what I'm doing with Where It Rains in Color. I'm not sure what all of you want me to talk about, but I do want to say this, that I've read comments by people of different ethnic backgrounds, and no matter who you are, you can find something to relate to in this book, whatever it is. I heard from a woman, a white woman, who said she had a skin ailment, and so she was reading about my protagonist who develops a skin ailment, and she was really relating to that, and she was really relating getting lost in the colors. And before I go any further, there was someone who just walked in who I really want to acknowledge, because Where It Rains in Color plays around with lots of concepts. It plays around with melanin. It plays around with the idea of a better future for African Americans. It flips beauty standards so that women of African descent are lifted up and not looked down on. Right now, African American women are the only women on the planet whose hair is banned in the workplace in all but 20 states. I mean, that's really something when you think about it. So the book is addressing that and, lifting us up where we belong. But in addition, it plays with concepts like sound, color at a certain frequency. No, sound at a certain frequency becomes color. I first heard of that idea when I was having a conversation one night with Malik Yakini. Malik, stand up, because I want to embarrass you. Okay, thank you. That's Malik. Malik and I were born on the same day. And we were having that conversation, and we were talking about all kinds of things. And I was always fascinated by how different vibrations change. They don't change, we just experience them differently. For instance, did you know that moths they make a certain noise that only the bats who eat them can hear? But we experience it as thermal heat. So I'm always experimenting with the idea that energy is energy and it's not going anywhere. Like maybe your dog will hear a sound that you don't hear, but you'll experience it in a different way. So when Malik brought up the concept that sound at a certain frequency becomes color, I started exploring it and reading about that more and more. And so you'll see some of that in Where It Rains in Color. I'm not sure what to talk about because I don't know what you want to hear about the book. So I'm going to read a passage, and after I read a passage, you can ask me questions about the book, about how I leaped from journalism to writing science fiction, or where I'm going next, or what you can expect to find in this book. Has anyone in here already read the book? Anyone? All right. What passage do you think I should read?
There are so many. I agree with the gentleman. The beginning is just so vivid, but
Okay, well, you know what? We're going to start at the beginning, okay?
beginning. Okay.
All right. All right. This is the prologue. She had the witchery of fire in her eyes, and her skin twinkled as she traipsed about the village, her ebony arms bare, her face black as a moonless sky. Such skin, it was said, must have had stars rubbed into it. With one breath, a Hanute could make it flicker. With another, she could enchant anyone who came near. Elders, overcome by her elegance, insisted that she had been anointed by the ancestors. They proclaimed she possessed the gift of shimmer, an unnatural glow, said to creep through the veins of the darkest of women and flash on and off like fractured light. At their prodding, a Hanute agreed to leave her rural community for what they called a more fitting status in Swazembe's glittering capital city, Boundary Circle. Unaware of what the elder women had already prophesied, it wasn't long before a Hanute was lured into an elite cadre of glorious aspirants and honored with their most prestigious title, the Rare Indigo. But the privilege didn't sit well in the Hanute's spirit. On the day she was chosen, she fled into the wild mists that floated across the surface of the planet. Wild mists, okay. Crouched in a grove of jacaranda trees, she hid for nearly an hour. Fretting, she peered through gaps between spindly branches, watching rainbows melt on the horizon like waves on a gentle sea, wondering what to do, how to proceed. At a distance, she spotted two minor children exploring the drifting colors, and in their wandering eyes, she detected mischief. Why do we live underground, one girl asked her friend. It's so much prettier up here. It's hypnotic, the friend said. She twirled one of her braids and grinned. That's it. Yes, that's it, the second girl shot back. You're real smart. I wish I could think of things like that. Like you. No, if you're real smart, you have to meet with M. Honduras. He sees things and hears things. Then you might too. Do you want that to happen? No, not me. I never want that to happen. Her friend laughed and swung her hands over her head, swatting at a thick spiral of pink and green flitting through the air. A Hanute sat watching amid the lilac flowers of the jacaranda grove, smiling as the girl skipped away. Then came a shrill voice. Without warning, it burst inside of her head, screeching and buzzing, filling it with gibberish. Task, horrors, task, do, we must break, destroy. She held her breath against the onslaught, numb to any other sensation, convinced the warm winds had stopped blowing. Your task, your task, your task. "Who is that?" she asked out loud. Her heartbeat quickened. "Task, task, task." Ahanate jumped up and dashed out of the grove. "Either tell me who you are now, or I'm going to the Sonnegaard," she said. "Task," the voice repeated. "Pick it up. Task, task." Ahanate waited. The scattered whispers grew louder. She pressed both hands over her ears. "Go, dome, to the dome, go." Trembling, Ahanate dropped her hands and obeyed, teetering toward a cluster of 25 by 25 meter domes. Her eyes skirted the brass tiles on the ground and landed on a clump of sand stuck in a crack along the dome's edge. The sand had hardened and formed a 3-inch crust. Ahanate checked to see if anyone was watching, then following the direction of the invader in her head, yanked on the crust. It didn't budge. Her hands shook as she gathered up red rocks and shattered limestone pieces that were scattered along the periphery of the dome. With a rock in each hand and her fingers still trembling, she chiseled the clump free and dug out a wedge of burlap cloth that was buried inside it. The cloth was bound tightly and tied in a strip of crumbling ribbon. She tried to steady her hands as she unwrapped it slowly, carefully. Inside was a scrap of crude bark paper that had been rolled into a tiny scroll. She opened it and felt a sudden jolt. The words, "I loathe you," were scrawled on the scroll. Ahanate clenched her fists, afraid to read more. What was this sinister scribble? She inhaled and forced herself to take in the rest of the note, all the while struggling to comprehend what it meant. The ramblings were vile, and she couldn't fathom why she had been led to them. She shoved the scroll into her pocket and ran. The winds were lifting higher, and the abundant rains were turning into deep swarms of color that tenderly caressed her cheeks. She blinked and brushed a flutter of orange away from her eyes. Suddenly her legs weakened, and she recalled the 2 playful girls strutting arm in arm across the sand. The Imhanura sees things and hears things, and then you might too. The idea made her shiver even more. Had she tapped into something supernatural? Was the scroll a threat? Who could tell? Certainly not her parents. They would send word to Imhandura himself, and he was known for his intolerance. What would he think of a rare indigo who delivered him such a wicked message? Would he accuse her of being cursed, of spreading evil? No, she could never reveal her discovery to him. The thought of destroying it popped into her mind, but she feared the consequences. If she got rid of it, would the whispers return? Would they nag her until her death? Ahanate resolved never to show the scroll to anyone. She would hide what she'd found, and if need be, deny that she'd ever heard that caustic voice. She would seal it all in her mind, swear herself to total silence. Ahanate didn't say another word for 41 years.
Wow.
Now, that was the prologue. The book hasn't really started yet. But I would like to say something I didn't mention before I open it up to questions. The book is actually rooted in Dogon mythology. Again, my friend Malik has actually met the Dogon. I haven't. I spent a year in Zimbabwe under a Rotary Foundation fellowship, as Carrie told you. While I was there, I was amazed. So in addition to my dream, I was having all these experiences in Africa for a while, and I was amazed at the fact that some of the people there went into trances, and they would talk about these trances just matter of factly, like you would talk about what you had for breakfast. Like, I don't know, doesn't everyone have trances? And so that's incorporated in the book. But I was finding out about African mysticism and the African wisdom, and I learned then about the Dogon tribe, even though they were in Mali, so I never met them. But I never forgot about them. I had already written the first draft of this book, the one that was stuck in the drawer for 30 years, and when I pulled it back out and started revising it, I started getting these hints and clues and signs that kept leading me back to Mali. Then suddenly the light went on. Wait a minute, these are the descendants of the Dogon tribe. Now, this is a planet called Swazimbi, 5,000 years in the future. The Earth has been destroyed. Suddenly, I'm thinking about the Dogon tribe. It occurred to me that the Dogon mythology fits so well as their history or their backstory. Now let me tell you about the Dogon. The Dogon live in huts on the Bandiagara cliffs, above the cliffs, right, Malik? This is what's fascinating about them. They have no technology, no telescopes, nothing, but they know more about the cosmos than Western astronomers and scientists. Mm-hmm. Now, when scientists or anthropologists from the West first met the Dogon began telling them about a companion star to the star Sirius. So there's the Sirius star, and the Dogon kept insisting, there's another star there, a companion star, they call it Potolo. The scientists they met, or anthropologists, whoever they were, kept telling them, there's no other star, what are you talking about? They kept insisting. Fast forward, in the West, they developed more sophisticated telescopes, and they saw it, a companion star to Sirius. Mm-hmm. Some of them happened to visit the Dogon again, and they asked them, how did you know this? And Dogon said that beings came from space on a spinning arc. And these beings, they call them nomos. These beings taught them all they know about the cosmos. And their knowledge of the cosmos is just so in-depth and incredibly detailed, incredibly intricate. Like I said, they know more than we do. Their reference to these beings on the arc from space is to this day referred to as Dogon mythology. They are real. The planet Swazembe, not real. Dogon are real, they're in Mali now. But my thing is this, when you write speculative fiction, you're always answering the question, what if? And my what if it's real? Because, okay, it's supposed to be their mythology, nobody believes them. Well then where did it come from? Where did they get this knowledge? And they're telling you this is where it came from. What reason do they have to make this up? So I decided, when they kept coming up over and over and over again when I was writing this in different ways, I decided, if they were interacting with these beings from this star Sirius B, I guess these beings would have had the foresight to say, the transatlantic slave trade is going to happen. Maybe we can whisk some of you out of here, those who want to go. Mm-hmm. And so I decided that this planet Swazembe was the planet where the descendants of the Dogon were taken. On Swazembe, they don't know their heritage, they don't know their backstory. Just like, right now we're dealing with the issue that they're trying to erase history by banning so many books. Mm-hmm. They don't really have books because it's so many years into the future. So they don't know this. But Lalila, when she changes, after she encounters the problems she encounters, she taps into that knowledge because she's communicating with the ancestors. But I just had to take a minute and tell you about the Dogon because they're absolutely fascinating. And then I'd like to open it up to questions. Okay.
Okay. Can you talk a bit, Denise, about character development and how much research you had to do to make sure I know that it's fiction and but some of it, because I know that you talk about, what do you call it when
Lalila.
Right. So did you know all about that? So did you have to draw on some of your the knowledge, your foreknowledge, or did you have to do a lot of research?
Did I know about what, the Inequitap, or what?
Well, yes, that, and just some of the actions and the movements and the just something as simple as dancing. At some point, did you ever have to maybe do some research on what would this person in this area do? How would they act? Or is it all from your mind?
That's the question. Obviously, a journalist would ask that question. She's a journalist. I had to do research on the Dogon because they're real.
Right. Yes.
If it's not real, I feel like it doesn't need any research.
Uh-huh.
But I did, at a certain point in the novel, she does go live on an asteroid, and so I did look up what it would be like on an asteroid. I didn't know this until I started researching it. Did you know that asteroids were made of diamond and platinum and gold and all these minerals? It's like, I'm like, wow, no wonder they're trying to get in space. But yeah, so I discovered also that there is enough oxygen to live on an asteroid.
Well, that's what I mean.
So stuff like that. So the real asteroids are real, the Dogon are real. So I looked that up. But for everything else, like Lalila, Her name, by the way, is from Mali. Leela's from Mali. That was one of the other hints and clues that kept leading me back to Mali.
Mhm.
I added the Lee in front of Leela just because, I was kind of territorial with the name, and I didn't want her name to sound too much like Christmas, like Princess Leia from
Right.
Star Wars. It just it's a different name, but it sounded too similar, so I just put that Lee in the front, which is interesting because now it's a tongue twister and not everyone can say it. But anyway, yeah. Okay.
Denise, I think it's very inspiring and also intriguing, your 30-year journey to bring this book to the fore. Could you talk a little bit about maybe some anecdotes of, some things that happened along the way?
Well, like I said, I was living in this little apartment in Warren. I had just quit the Detroit News, and I was going to take another job. I was hired to become editor of the Crisis magazine, but I had a few months. And well, before I took that job, I actually was offered another job with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I actually turned the job down because I felt like, wait a minute, I only have this one. I've never had this time before. I really, really, really want to deal with this dream. So when I turned it down, they said, well, we understood. The guy said he understood. He said he's been 39 before. I didn't know what that meant. But I guess he was trying to say I was at that age where I was feeling like I wanted to do this. So I took those 3 months and I just focused on it. My mother at the time didn't understand why I was so obsessed. And she was like, you're not sleeping. All you're doing is writing this. And so one time she gave me a half of a Valium and said, take this, go to sleep. What are you doing? And so I went to sleep that night, but I woke up in the middle of the night and still went to my computer and started writing. But she finally calmed down because she happened to be looking at a talk show, and on the talk show, there was a writer who said that he had this novel that came to him in a dream, and then we started writing. He was working on it obsessively, and then she was like, oh, okay, I guess you're okay. So anyway, that was during that phase. So I finished it, and it just sat in the drawer. So during the 30 years since then, I happened to attend a melanin lecture, and I was riveted because it was so compelling to find out that melanin is more than just skin pigment and the different ways it could be used, which is a little bit why I was disappointed with the Star Trek episode on Next Generation about when they went to the Black Planet. But I wasn't that disappointed. They did a good job. It was just that I was expecting more of them than they probably really even knew, and I felt like as someone of African descent, that's my responsibility or our responsibility to explore those kinds of concepts. So that was in my mind. My agent doesn't like it when I talk about this, but I also was upset because Psychology Today ran a study. They didn't run it in the magazine, but they ran it in their online publication. Someone took it upon himself to actually do research to unequivocally prove, I don't know what kind of empirical evidence he thought he had, that Black women were unattractive.
What? Wow.
Yes, I wish I was making that up. I was like so stunned and so upset. Ironically, Tamron Hall was on, was she on MSNBC before the Today Show? I think she was on MSNBC then. And she was the reporter or the anchor who had to read this nonsense. And as you know, Tamron Hall's beautiful.
Right.
And I saw the expression on her face, and I was almost like, I feel you, girlfriend. What's going on? My thing is, why would somebody waste energy conducting that kind of a research? Why would Psychology Today agree to publish it? And I also was feeling like, if that's the way you feel about a certain group of women, then just don't deal with us. You don't have to go out of your way. So that was on my mind. So I had this idea that, oh, I'm going to prove that we're beautiful. I don't know. And I had this idea, I want to explore melanin. And so all these things over the years, so I had the dream 30 years ago and wrote it, but over the years, other ideas were percolating. And so I think that was part of the journey. And so I like sharing some of these things in the years because it's like saying to all of you, it's not too late. Whatever that dream is, whatever you want to do, there was somebody right there.
Hi, Denise.
Hi.
What's the reason that your agent doesn't want you to talk about that?
She feels like that is negative. You know,
It is the
Real.
truth.
It's real.
it's real because
You didn't create the
You
argument.
know better than that. Even if it's really.
Yeah, but I mean, the agent should be, you know, more
They want the money.
inclusive.
They don't care about.
Yeah, some people
I'm
feel like
sorry,
you
I'm
keep it,
sorry.
and I do like to take the high road and keep it positive, because there's so much, there's so many things that inspired me to write this book. That's one of them. There's so many reasons why why did I decide to make her blue-black? Because that's not the skin tone that's normally perceived as most beautiful. And I felt like, why not? And again, that speculative fiction question, the what if it was? Why not flip the skin tones? And I will say this, my publisher, Angry Robot, they loved the idea. And one review site, literary publication, it's a Book Riot, they said, they're in their review, that Where It Rains in Color will have you rethinking the way you see beauty. And I think Angry Robot, and they're a white company, I think they were more excited than I was. So it was like they were ready. I mean, I think that we're living at a time when some people, we know they're the MAGA people, and some people who just are resistant and holding on. But I think people are embracing change and embracing diversity and embracing some inclusivity. And so this is inclusivity. It's saying, let's celebrate all skin tones. And I always say to everyone, if you look at the range of color among people of African descent, you'll see, you can see all the way from porcelain to honey to caramel to cocoa to ebony to midnight black, and all of it is beautiful. But we don't generally honor it because there's just so much pain associated with focusing on this person's light and this person is dark. So I'm making an attempt to sort of erase colorism, and Pershing High School started a book club around the book. I'm excited about that, so I met with the girls there, and they're talking. Okay, somebody was next after, who was, okay, it was, were you? Okay, it was, okay.
First and foremost, I have to say, I am so thrilled to be here because we connect, mutual friends, Denise. I am so proud of you, and I want to say, most importantly,